Welcome to the Folk Hogan podcast, where we deep dive into the world of Folk Hogan, bringing you band stories, behind-the-scenes action, and everything in between. Whether it's new music, tales from the road, or exclusive interviews with the band, we got you covered. Thanks for tuning in, and let's get started.
Yeah.
Well, we teased a little bit. We teased a little bit that we were gonna go through all the new stuff on the new album last episode, but then we pulled a 180, which is this is what happens when you're in a band. Changes get made
all the time.
All the time.
On the fly.
And sometimes you're privy to them, and sometimes you're not. So now you have a little taste of what it's like to have to be endlessly flexible.
Yeah.
You guys play at 6. No, it's actually 8. No, it's actually 4 p.m. No, it's actually the day before. So we're going to talk about some tales from the road.
And boy, do we have a lot.
What was the show in the 90s with the Crypt Keeper?
Tales from the Crypt.
Tales from the Crypt. Yeah. It's kind of like that. Imagine our tour manager as the same sort of figure, just sitting on a rolly chair in a dirty office somewhere. Just
I don't think you already.
They'll play at a Thai restaurant for buffet and $200.
Yep. I mean, if the food's good, yeah, sure.
They got curry.
Yeah. Oh boy. Everyone in this band's a sucker for curry.
We're in. Yeah. There's rice though, at least, right?
Oof.
So that's what we're going to talk about, and maybe we'll play a song or two if we feel like they tie in.
Yeah.
But we're going to start with we're going to ping pong between Moses and I, because that's who you got. I'm Nick Passy.
I'm Moses Allen McKinley.
And I play guitar in Folk Hogan.
I play mandolin and I sing a bunch of songs.
Okay, you really took the cue for this ping pong, and I love it.
15 years of being on stage together. We've got it figured out.
In the women's restroom of the Las Vegas Punk Rock Museum, when you sit down on the toilet, there's some graffiti directly in front of you that says, "Would you like to play toilet tennis? Look left." And then you look left, and there's some graffiti that says, "Now look right." And you look right, and it says, "Now look left." And then you're going ping, pong.
I love that.
Oh, they got me.
That's wonderful.
I know, isn't that classic?
Why were you in the women's restroom?
Sorry,
that's too personal.
I wasn't.
Question.
I got a video demonstration of this thing that I wouldn't have known about otherwise, because I don't just go lurking around restrooms. I pick people up in classy places. like directly out of the restroom. What were you doing?
There you go.
Did you have did everything come out all right?
How'd it go? Yeah.
But, that's how we've learned to ping pong. The other thing about that place, Fletcher from Pennywise.
Yeah.
They have a drink named after Fletcher. It's $14, and it's the drink from his Ryder. And what a Ryder is, if you've never been a touring band, is the list that you give to someone, and then maybe they give you that stuff.
Yeah.
Hopefully they do. If you're Van Halen and those things aren't there, then you don't play.
Yeah.
But if you're a scrummy little punk band, maybe you get those things, maybe you don't, and that's really a good indication of how the night's going to go. But for Fletcher and Pennywise, his is a can of Pringles, and they've got rum and Coke and various other things for the other band members. And the reason that's on there is he gets some ice and some limes, which are probably also on the Ryder, and he makes himself a big rum and Coke, pours out the chips, and pours it into the can. And then when it's time to sound check, he's walking onto stage or wherever through whatever back areas with a can of Pringles, so no one stops him. So that's how he's able to transport his cocktail. Well, so this became like a thing of they took this lore. You've got to go to this museum. I could sit here and talk about it for hours, but that's not what this podcast is about. Totally. And so you can get a Fletcher, and so they pour out the chips, and they give you a thing of chips and like a little to-go thing, and they make you a rum and Coke.
That's fascinating.
I know.
So
I know.
For years, the joke that we always had was we'd fill out Ryders when we were playing festivals, and we would ask for a blow-up doll full of whiskey. For years, that was the thing we asked for. We never got it, but we did one time get a blow-up doll and a bottle of whiskey.
Yeah,
but
was there an apparatus to connect the two?
No, that was up to us. But
it was all
it never
just
made it into the blow-up doll.
It was all just whatever you could hold in your cheeks at a time.
Yep.
Until you passed out trying to blow it up.
Fun aside, the reason many people know the story of Van Halen not having in their rider that they wanted a bowl of M&Ms with all the brown M&Ms taken out.
Yeah.
The purpose of that was back in those days, doing those big arena shows was a pretty new thing to do. And with as many amplifiers as they would bring in, all the gear that they would bring in, there was a need to ensure that all the power was routed correctly, because if it wasn't, it could kill the band. When they went up to, if they were touching their instrument and then touched a microphone, if things weren't grounded properly, it could kill one of them. So they came up with this idea to have this bowl of M&Ms with all the brown M&Ms taken out. And if you've ever heard an interview with them or read any of their books, they say in there that every time they got to a dressing room and there wasn't a bowl of M&Ms, or there was a bowl of M&Ms where the brown M&Ms weren't taken out,
it was like it
was the canary in the coal mine. They would immediately have their technical guys go through everything, and every single time they would find a problem. And so that's the reason why, you've heard stories of like all these bands. It sounds like they're being divas wanting M&Ms without the brown M&Ms.
It was parodied.
Yeah.
It was parodied in Wayne's World.
Yeah.
When the crazy old roadie guy's like, and he wouldn't go on stage until he got 1,000 green M&Ms.
Yeah, and it turns out it was entirely for the safety of the crew in the band. So we were not that serious, which is why we requested a blow-up doll full of whiskey. But
there have been times, so we'll get into it in another episode. There have been times where somebody successfully fulfilled everything in our rider.
Yes, yeah.
And we were living like kings.
Yes.
Snacking. And there was one show in particular that I remember multiple members of Folk Hogan turning to me and going, I don't have any room left to drink because I've eaten and snacked so much.
Yeah.
Folk Hogan rich.
Scott, one time, he's done this a few times. He's written our writers and requested there be a dog for us to pet, and then put at the bottom, like, if there is not a dog for us to pet, then we will not play the show. And we've gotten to pet a dog, which we all love dogs. So it's like, there's nothing that makes us happier before going on stage other than maybe whiskey.
Well, thinking about all of these crazy things and tying it into our Tales from the Road, Moses, what is one of the craziest, or I'm not even going to say crazy because I think we'll get into that, but what's one of the funniest things that happened to you on this most recent Europe tour? What's something that you think back about? What's something that's become part of the inner fibers of the blanket of rock and roll?
One of the things that we do every tour, some people may have heard about this, but we play a game called the Tattoo Game. And the way it works is everyone that wants to participate throws in $20, and you get to draw something in a circle that's about 2 inches around, and you can draw whatever you want. We do have some loose rules. No genitalia can be drawn, and ideally no swear words. And everyone can kind of draw something in these circles, and then we play a game of chance. Now, sometimes that game of chance is rolling a dice and trying to land on a specific number. Sometimes it's, a lot of times we'll put it in the hands of the tattoo artist and say, like, on this last European tour, what we did is we handed them a coin had them put their hands behind their back, and then we all got in a line and had to try to guess which hand the coin was in. And
so we're setting them up to try to eliminate any skill involved or any cheating.
Yeah. Yep. We don't want it to be skill involved. We want it to be absolutely a game of chance. And the way it worked on this last tour, we were in Hoofddorp in the Netherlands, where our tour manager, Jordi, lives. We love Jordi. He's the best. And we, as we frequently do, we show up to this tattoo shop as it's closing. We walk in like, hey, I know you guys are closing. Would you be willing to do a tattoo? And they're always like, and then that's when we lay it on them. All right, here's what we're doing. We explain the tattoo game to them. Every shop we've ever done that to is immediately like, we will stay open late for you just so you can get a stupid tattoo. So at this one, we did the coin in the tattoo artist's hand behind his back, and then he'd bring his hands out. You had to guess which hand it was in. Sometimes we'll go through like multiple rounds to pick the person. Sometimes it's pretty quick. On this one, Sebastian won. And Sebastian, when we go to the Netherlands, I love the Netherlands. I wish I could live there. If Folk Hogan ever wanted to move to the Netherlands, in a heartbeat, I would not take a second thought. I'd move there. I love that country. It's beautiful. But they have a specific kind of bar food in the Netherlands called Bitterballen.
Oh, yeah.
And Bitterballen is essentially a super finely shredded beef mixed into a roux, refrigerated and rolled into balls, and then dipped in egg and dipped in panko. So you get like a nice bready crust to it, and then deep fried. And then you dip it in like a Dijon mustard.
It's so popular that I've probably tried 10 different vegan versions of it.
It's the greatest bar food of all time. And I'm shocked that it hasn't caught on anywhere else, because it is so good.
It's a deep fried gravy meatball.
I mean, it's perfect. It's perfect.
It's violently American.
So Sebastian,
for being a thing that is not American.
Yes.
How have we not said, this is our food?
Because we stole everything from everyone else, I guess. So Sebastian won the tattoo game at this particular in Hoofddorp. And we ended up, doing the game of chance. Sebastian won, so he got a little bitterballen on his right forearm with a little Dutch flag sticking out of it. And as frequently happens when we do this, then the rest of the people working in the shop always just want to talk to us about like, oh, wow, so you guys do this a lot. This is crazy. And the guy that owned the shop was like, in the back, we have a drawing of the human body, and then next to it, there's a page of terrible tattoos that we've all come up with and added to this paper and drawn all these ridiculous things. And then next to that is a list of all the tattoo artists' names. And what we'll do when we get bored, if we don't have anyone coming in, is someone will go over there and they'll throw a dart at each board. And that means they have to get a tattoo in this spot of the body, wherever the dart lands. And it has to be the tattoo on the page of terrible tattoos, wherever the dart lands there. And then whoever's name it lands on does the tattoo.
So you guys came in with this idea, and they're like, look.
And they were like, yeah, we do this all the time. We have a Dutch
version of this.
Yes, we do this all the time. And I was like, I got to see this page of terrible tattoos. And so he pulls out this page and shows it to me. And there's some hilarious stuff. There's one that's a pile of poop with a little banner that just says shit. And like there's all these silly things on it. And I notice one thing and I point at it and I was like, is that an angry tampon? And he was like, yeah, I've been wanting to do that for years. And I was like, that's amazing. I would get that right now. And he just stopped and he was like, I will give this to you right now.
I was going to go home.
And I was like, are you serious? And he was like, I will do it for you right now for free. And I was like, I mean, you can't pass that up. So, so I immediately was like, okay, let's do it. Yes, let's do it. So he starts getting prepared while I'm trying to think of where to put it. And I was going to put it on my inner thigh, which I think is the proper place for an angry tampon tattoo. But then I was like, I want to be able to show it off.
Yeah.
So Cameron always gives me a hard time because my armpit hair, I don't trim it, and it's long and it creeps him out. And so then I was like, you know what? I could put it underneath my armpit because with my arm down, it looks kind of similar. So so I ended up getting an angry tampon tattooed on my ribs right under my armpit. And so Sebastian won the tattoo game, and I got an awesome tattoo out of it. I didn't take it for free. He said he'd do it for free, but I still paid him like 160
here's
€.
Moses, an artisan, a craftsman,
Yeah, I'm not going to do that.
a smith.
Plus, it was awesome to talk to him. He had a lot of good stories.
Not
to tell,
not like Sebastian Smith. It's a literal smith.
Yeah, absolutely, and one of the best ones there's ever been. But yeah, that was a very memorable moment of the tattoo game is always a memorable moment of tour. And so frequently these tattoo artists will just kind of open their doors to us once they hear about the tattoo game. They're always just super keen to do whatever they can to be part of it. And so frequently people will stay open late and people will accommodate us in any way they can.
We all want to get matching butterflies. I know you're closing.
So we've had the tattoo game for over a decade now.
Yeah. We've talked about it a lot among our friends.
Yeah.
And our fans and trying to explain away some of these weird tattoos that you guys have gotten because I no needles for me.
Yeah. Nick's tattoo free.
Yeah. I'm saving myself for needle drugs when we get a little bit older in the band.
Yeah. So, yeah,
I'm very reserved about it.
Yeah. Reasonably so.
I've had so many conversations about it. I have no reason to not have like 1,000 bad tattoos and like 2 good ones that are half finished. Like, I know it's just a butt, but there's going to be the front of the dog attached to it eventually.
Yeah. So it's a good time. What about you? Is there like is there a gig from that most recent Europe tour that like stood out to you a whole bunch?
Yeah. The Nightclub.
Oh yeah, Bamberg. Yeah.
First of all, we were going to have some days off after a long drive to Bamberg. We were going to have some days off, and I did a lot of the lodging. I pretty much picked out all the lodging except for one place that Ashley picked out.
Yeah. My girlfriend. Yeah.
Because Ashley was with us for the whole tour, and we had a couple extra people that were just hanging out, helping out with stuff along the road.
Amber and Aria.
Amanda Aria,
was there briefly.
Ashley, all of the A's.
Yeah, it was tricky. There
we had 4 extra people at one point, plus a 5-person band, all squished together.
And those 4 extra people, their names all started with an A, and there was a period for the couple days where all 4 of them were there, where it was just like, I'm not going to call anyone by their name because I'm gonna get it wrong.
I'm still that has been the side effect of that long-lasting side effect of that tour is that I have I don't like to talk about it because it chokes me up, but I have early onset mom disease where you mix up all of the names of your children.
Yeah.
And so I'm always I have to go through the whole list. I'm like, Ashley, Amber, Amanda, Aria, whoever you are. Just,
Yeah, Bamberg, that show was out of control. This was a show. There's this, Bamberg is this amazing, beautiful, historic city in southern Germany that, there's a college there. And so they have this nightclub in town, and they have bands play, but the way it works is the bands play from 9 to 10, and then at 10 o'clock it just becomes a dance club until they close. And what they do is you get in free before 9 o'clock or before 10 o'clock. As long as the band is playing, you get in free. After 10 o'clock, you have to pay to get in, but frequently there's too many people in there for anyone to get in after 10. So it's sort of like having this captive audience, which being a DIY band, we just want to play. Yeah, we don't have a ton of fans over there.
If there's also people there, there's a box checked.
Yeah, so we show up, and this place is very large, and it's a big boy stage. It's real deep, real wide, and 9 o'clock comes around. I think they open doors at like 8:30, so people start filtering in. And by the time we start playing, there's maybe 200 people in the building.
And we're starting to go, okay.
Yeah, all right, this is feeling good.
All right.
And then, by the time we were done, it was just, people were crunched together front to back from the front of the stage to the very back of the building.
Yep.
It was out of control.
Yeah. So from my perspective, the reason that this show was incredibly successful is, one, there were a ton of people there. It was a big, huge stage. Everything went well that could have. But for me, it was like I was getting to, but I distracted myself. We had this really cool hotel. We were going to be staying there for, it was a whole property. It was a 2-level Airbnb that we had rented out the whole house worth. But you could rent it individually, or for a large group like us, we could rent the whole thing. So we had 2 kitchens. We had 2 giant bathrooms. We were going to just be chilling. We were meeting up with my friend Jess, that's been on tour with us and done merch. Everybody during that period of the band spent a bunch of time with Jess, and she's so bubbly and wonderful, but had to move from Salt Lake to Germany to just get better, just have a better life, get better care, get a chance to breathe clean air outside of this valley and go to school and all the things that Germany does for their citizens. And so we were meeting up with Jess, and I was, as sober as a judge because I was going to be driving the van, and I drove in and dropped everybody off. We unloaded, and then I went to go park the van, and the city looks like what you might imagine Italy would look like, cobblestone roads, barely enough room to get a car.
15 feet wide.
Doesn't look like the car will make it through a lot of spaces. And here's a van that fits 9 people plus our gear, like a giant 15 passenger van, like Eurovan style van. It was a BMW, right?
Mercedes.
A Mercedes, yeah. The other logo.
Yeah.
And I'm driving this thing, and I go to park where one of the engineers told me, go park down here. It's about a half a mile away. It's like a 10-minute walk back, but it's the only place that you can park long term. And it was really like a hell of a parking thing, but this is to be expected when you're playing on a street that looks like you could barely drive through it, let alone, there's no chance at parking there. So I get all the way down, and I don't quite see a space. And I'm like, you know what? There was a space back there. That will probably work. I'm going to drive to the end of this and turn around. Well, I get all the way to the end, and there's no outlet. And there's no chance that I'm going to back up for several blocks. So I go and start to do a U-turn. And then all of a sudden I realize I am stuck with 9 inches on either side of the front or the back of the van. And a jogger comes around, and he's about our age and sees me and just kind of laughs and then starts directing, and no way that I would have been able to turn the van around. So I finally get the van turned back around, get back to the parking space, Google Translate to make sure that I'm actually parking in a place I can be. I'm half sure that I am, half sure that I'm not. And get all the way back to the venue, and we do a big, huge sound check. And once the show finally starts, there are club photographers. There are several professional photographers. We've got Aria that's with us with the camera. And so there's
Amber also had her camera.
Amber. So there are thousands of photos from the show being edited by like 5 different people after the fact, getting posted all over the place. And when we finally hit the stage, there was, 600 to 700 people in the room. And as we're finishing, you're directing the crowd to sing along, and people are really engaged. And even though they might have not, other than about 50 people that were there for us that left immediately after, which was still huge on its own. Yeah. I'm not sure how that happened.
Yeah.
Everybody was engaged and very vocal and singing along and very interested in listening. And then we finish and we're loading off, and immediately it's just like what you'd expect a Berlin techno club to be like in its modern age. Just, Aero Papa. Yeah, there's some really interesting music that's popular right now. So that's probably my most memorable.
Yeah, one of the crazy things about that show was, like we're up there singing in English, and most Germans speak English quite well, and we got to towards the end of the set and did Bourbon Blues, and as we frequently do, we did a sing-along, taught everyone the lyrics, which they picked up rather quick, and continued to sing along as Cameron was doing his improvised terrible sign language. And then, Stevie Ray Vaughan, the blues guitarist from the 80s and early 90s, had a quote ages ago that, when you're on stage and you're playing for a crowd, you're trying to put all your energy into it. And when a crowd is into it and they are singing along and they're dancing along and you can tell that they're into it, they're putting off an energy that you then pick up as the musician, and then you pick that energy up and you build upon that and then put it back out, and they receive that and build upon that. And that is absolutely how it works. The more into it a crowd is, the better the band will be. So remember that with every band you see. But to be on the other side of the planet with a bunch of people whose second language or maybe third language is English, singing along. And this place probably at this point had, 600 plus people in it.
Easily.
And the majority of them singing along. I could see people at the back of the building with their arms up in the air singing along. Like, that's just a incredible experience. And as we were finishing the set, getting done and being like, okay. And, during the show, we know it's a nightclub. So in my head, I'm like, they're all happy to see us, sure, but everyone here is waiting for the nightclub to start so that they can dance. And so we finished the last song and it's like, cool, we're done. Thank you so much. Have a good one. And we started to get encore chants. And it was like, oh man, these people are here to dance, and yet they still want us to continue to play. So we did a couple more songs, and that was such a cool experience.
Do you remember any specific, club hits that played after us though?
Oh man. There were so many like remixes, and everyone there seemed to know every word to every song. I remember there was like a remix of Ace of Base's I Saw the Sign.
Oh yeah.
And just like the whole place was jumping up and down.
Yeah.
I was like, hell yeah, this is cool. So this is Euro Papa. This song was Netherlands submission for Eurovision.
Yeah, you gotta go watch the music video to this.
Europa, welkom in Europa. Blijf hier tot je doodgaan. Europa, Europa.
It's great.
It's like really hilarious, really funny. a little self-aware.
Yeah, the music video is unbelievable.
Yeah.
We got there and like as soon as we landed in Netherlands, we looked up what the #1 song was in Netherlands, and it was that song. And and at first we were like, "What is this?" And then we looked up the music video, and it became everyone's favorite song pretty much immediately. So yeah, that was an awesome show. Let's talk about a show that didn't go as planned.
Ooh.
You want to talk about Switzerland? We played this show in Switzerland. We got booked at this place in Switzerland. Our pals in Hectic Hobo were there like a week after us too.
Yeah, they were.
But like we show up, we walk in, we go to the bartender. He's this British fellow. And we're like, "Hey, so where does the band set up?" And he's like, "I don't know. I've worked here for a week. So I'm not sure." And so we're like looking around and we just like identify a corner and we're like, we think that's probably going to be the best place. So we start moving tables and chairs, getting everything set up. And then the manager shows up and he's like, "Hey, the band's not supposed to set up there. You're supposed to set over in that corner." And we're like, "Yeah, we can't fit in that corner.
No
There's
way.
5 of us.
Yeah.
So this is going to be it." And he was like, "Well, that's a problem because you've taken away like 20 seats in the bar because we had to move a bunch of tables. So we had to like rearrange some stuff." And as we're setting up, like, you know, we had taken all the proper plugs for the EU, but they use different plugs in Switzerland. So then we had to like find all the right things to plug into that.
Which this is our 3rd Europe tour at this point.
Yeah.
We've never been to Switzerland. All we know is don't bring any merchandise into the country.
Don't bring merchandise to Switzerland.
Don't bring any drugs into the country.
Yeah, naturally.
But like basically just a lot of signs and symptoms of they're very, very secure about their border. You're not just like casually driving into another country like you've experienced. Like, be prepared to be delayed and searched and all of these things. And so we get in there kind of like cautious and everything. And the last thing that we expected was to not be able to plug in anything.
Yeah. Yeah.
And what was their power like?
Their power was terrible. And so there were 2 outlets and they were both like 25 feet apart from each other. And we get plugged into one of them and then we need to plug our mixer in. And Sebastian is like following this extension cord and he sticks his head out from behind this little facade wall and he looks at me and he's like, "It's bad." Yeah. And I was like, "How bad?" He's back there
because when I tried to plug it in, poof, power tripped. And I'm like, "Hey, you're the furthest in the back. Why don't you crawl back here?" And he's like, "Okay."
So he goes back there. He says it's bad. And then he sends me a photo of a power strip plugged into a power strip plugged into a power strip. And I was like, "Oh yeah, that is bad. That's not good." And so I climb back there to see if I can find a solution, only to find that 3rd power strip is plugged into a power strip that's plugged into a power strip. And
which eventually goes to like the basement.
Yeah, it goes like behind a wall.
300, 200-year-old place that's probably been a pub for 100 years.
Right. And we tell the manager and he's like, "I don't even know where the breaker box is.
I don't know. I just
can't
own the
reset
place.
that."
I've never looked at where the switches are.
So then we
I've only worked here for 20 years.
We find a workaround only to figure out, once we find the workaround, we're like, "Okay, wait a minute, where's the speakers?" Because we have all our gear to plug into speakers.
Yeah.
And we take that with us, but outside of that, like we don't take speakers. That's too much for us to carry around. And most places we don't need it. And we eventually find out that there is a single 8-inch speaker sitting up on top of a wall that's supposed to have our entire band sound coming out of it.
Tiny main and a little tiny baby subwoofer that goes with it.
And
what you would use if you were going to play music and maybe have one MC at like the smallest wedding you've ever been to.
Yeah. So now we're really panicking and it's like, okay, drums are going to be too loud because the ceiling's only 10 feet high. And this is a very old brick building.
Not enough for a DJ.
Yeah.
If the DJ at your wedding showed up with this, they wouldn't get paid.
Yeah. So Sebastian starts trying to find things to cover his drums in. And he's got like a sack that he, had some drum heads in. And then he borrows a couple of tea towels from the bar. But he's still short one thing to cover his snare in, or I think it was his tom. And I was like, Sebastian, do you need something to cover this tom? And he was like, yeah, but there's nothing else. They won't give me any more tea towels. And I was like, okay, give me a minute. So I went downstairs to the bathroom, and
We've exhausted the outlets and the 3 rags that this place has.
So I come back up, and I'm like, I got something for you to cover your drum with. And if you're not okay with it,
you're
that's
down there
okay.
in the vending machine putting quarters in, and like, I got you, Billy boy.
And he's like, what is it? And I had taken off my underwear, and I was like, you can put these over your tom. So he puts my underwear over his tom to quiet it down. And so when we're about to start this show, every one of us is side-eyeing each other, just going like, I can't believe this is an absolute nightmare. And there's only maybe a 20 people in the bar at the time.
And at this point, we've been through the private conversations of, well, maybe Sebastian's like, maybe I just don't play drums.
Yeah.
We're like, no.
We were like, nope. If we're doing this at all, we're doing it as a whole.
Oh yeah, it's all of us. We're here. We drove to Switzerland all day.
So we start playing, and there was a big pew, like a church pew, that was against the wall that we had moved in front of us, more as like a partition than anything. And like halfway through the second song, the pew is now full. It's a bunch of people sitting in front of us, including the bar manager. And
with folk Hogan hymnals.
Yeah, everyone's clapping along and singing along as best they can. And people
are shaking erratically.
Yeah, it was holding snakes up. It turned out like it turned into such an awesome thing, and it was such a great example.
What a Swiss snake says?
No surprise. So
yeah,
it should have been
exactly like our snakes.
It should have been a nightmare show.
They sound different,
but it ended up being such a wonderful blast of a time. One of the hilarious things that happened is like halfway through the set, the manager liked us so much that he was like, I'm going to get you guys a bottle that you can share. And I was like, oh, hell yeah. A free bottle of whiskey. Yeah, we'll take it. Right. He comes back with a bottle of Prosecco.
The mixer?
Yeah, everyone in the band is just like, oh, God, what is this?
It's mostly corn syrup.
It's free, so we're going to have to drink it anyways.
Wait, Prosecco is the champagne.
It's a super
I was
bubbly
thinking
drink.
Of triple sec.
Oh, that would have been
triple Prosecco.
It might have been better.
Yeah.
Yeah, it ended up just being a blast. We met a lot of awesome people there, and like it was such a great example of like, if things aren't going the way that you think they should go, find a way around it.
Then you might be a folk punk band.
Yeah, you might have to.
You might just be a folk punk band.
We really had to like bend all of the things that we normally do to the breaking point to make that show work, and it ended up so cool. It was so much fun.
Yeah.
But I don't know. Sometimes those things go wrong. What are some things that, aside from Nick has fallen off of like multiple stages.
Yeah, not on this tour.
But what else from shows has gone wrong for you over the years?
Oh, name it. Early, one of our very first shows all the way back in 2011, playing a Wednesday night at what was that bar? The Woodshed.
Woodshed. Oh, whoa, I love you, Woodshed. I miss you.
I had to forever. I had to fire some synapses and catch them on the other end there. I had played probably 1,000 shows with different bands that I had been in at this point, but. Yeah. Well, no, I probably played closer to 200 or 300 shows.
Okay.
Now, folk Hogan at this point has played about 1,000 shows. Yeah. But and so I'm not nervous in the way that someone would be nervous performing for their first, 40 or 30 or 20 or it's different for everybody. Some people never get over that stage fright fear.
Yeah.
And but I'm not super comfy with things that can go wrong. And, we had maybe a 45-minute set in total. We probably had 7 songs at this point of the band.
Yeah.
So we'd get together twice a week and we'd go through the set like 4 times and be like, okay, practice is done.
Yeah.
Let's drink some whiskey and wine shots.
Yep.
Well, I broke a string on my guitar, and I was just dumbfounded. But my instrument at this time was complete trash, garbage, and hadn't been touched by the hands of a luthier, which is not a religion. It comes from the word lute, which is what Moses is. He builds and repairs instruments for a living.
Yeah.
So Moses hadn't worked through this guitar and made it perfect, or as great as it could be. So a string breaks, and I'm like in such shock. I don't remember how to change a string. I'm like panicking, and Moses just snaps into luthier mode, and he's like, "Do you have strings?" I'm like, "Yes, I do. They're here." He's like, "Okay, which string was it?" "Okay, it was this one." "All right," and he's like, "Hold the guitar out." So I'm holding the guitar out as he's furiously pulling a string through, taking the old string out and tuning this thing up as fast as he can. We don't have any tools available. He's just twisting and twisting and twisting. And Canyon's on stage talking, vamping like he could.
Yeah.
And we finally get it going, and we recover, and I'm just like too nervous to exist. We used to share one single tuner for the band.
Oh, I don't miss that.
Which, the obvious question beckons, why not get a second or a third? Why not everyone have their own professional tuner? Why not have a good stage tuner on each of your pedal boards or rigs? Well, the reason was we had to tune the whole band to the accordion, which was out of tune from a 440A, which is at some point what they decided an A was going to be. Because going back into musical history, a lot of instruments had mobile tunings, and they had, if you look at a cello, you can move up and down the fretboard to be in tune with the other orchestral instruments, or a violin or anything similar. But early guitars had movable frets.
Yeah.
And it's because they hadn't standardized what key everyone was going to actually be in Western music.
Yeah.
And so this old accordion, just like if you go listen to an old recording or something like that, or if you've ever tried to tune up and play along to one of the first two albums, you'll notice very quickly, like, something's wrong here.
Yeah.
This hurts my ear a little bit. And it's because we used to tune to a 443 and a half.
It was 444.5.
444.5.
Yeah. 4.5 cents sharp.
Yeah. So you have to tune up.
So you have to have a tuner that will allow you to get to 444.5. And, we had a strobe tuner that would allow us to do that, but it was hell. We would have to, in between songs, there would frequently be like a queue. We'd all be in line to use the tuner to try to get in tune with the accordion. I don't miss that at all.
It's like the old joke about musicians being so poor that I saw them all sharing the same cigarette before the show.
Yeah. Yeah, those
how
were
our
the crazy,
tuner was.
those were the crazy days, yeah. And eventually we were able to get Canyon MIDI accordion, so we didn't have to do it, and we could all just use regular tuners. But
our original drummer at the time, Jeremy, after that show, had the audacity to tell me, "Why don't you just bring a second or a third guitar? Why don't you have a backup guitar?" And I just looked back at him and I was like, "What are you gonna do if your snare drum breaks?"
Yeah, you bring in a second snare.
Do you have a second snare?
We don't have a van. How are we gonna get it here?
I brought somebody to fix my instrument. What are you gonna do?
Yeah.
But I've never been a bring three guitars to the open mic kind of guitarist. That's just a different, to me, that's like a faux pas. That's like the cell phone hoster of showing up and looking like an idiot.
Yeah, I mean, it's good to have a backup, but logistically, like, one of the things that a lot of people don't see behind the scenes is, we have spent a decade and a half Tetrising everything into the back of the van to the point where there's rarely any extra space to fit another thing. With all the merch that we carry and everyone's instruments and our rack cases and the drum kit and the bass amp, like it's just, there's just no room.
Horn section on the top with some bunchy tethers.
I've had to do that in a band I was in years ago. We actually duct taped a bunch of guitars to the top of a car and drove to Idaho.
Are you guys all right up there? And they're just...
And I had just
only answer
I had just bought this guitar like a month before, and I spent the entire drive looking out the sunroof just trying to make sure that my guitar stayed there.
Yeah, the guitar duct tape to the roof is a vibe.
Yeah, it was.
Well, has there been a fan interaction that really left a lasting impact on you? Maybe something that shocked you, or something that was extremely positive, or, before I even let you finish, fan is short for the word fanatical. So,
or fancier.
I think it's short for the word fanatical.
So I've got two examples. I'll give you a
fanatic.
Good.
It's short for the word fanatic, not fanatical.
I'll give you a good and a bad.
Okay.
The good, shocking one was the first time we went to Europe. We were playing in Almere at this place called De Meester, and it was like they did like a frat themed party that night, and the place was all decorated, super weird, and
they were LARPing America.
Yeah, like halfway through the second song, I heard someone singing off key, and I looked to my left, and Canyon and Jared weren't at their mics. And
you're like, who's singing off key?
And I looked to my right.
Which one of you?
And Nick, you weren't at your mic. And I was like, what is going on? And I kept hearing it. And I was like, maybe it's just reverberating through the room really weird. And then Cameron tapped me on the shoulder and pointed a guy out. And there was some guy in another country that we'd been to for the first time dancing around, singing along with our songs. And it was just this amazing thing. We have this friend, Fleur, who lives over in the EU. I think she's in Netherlands now, but everywhere she's lived after being in Salt Lake, whenever she has parties at her houses, she plays our music. And so a bunch of people are always exposed to it. And this guy had heard us. He liked us. He took a train like 2 hours to get to that show. And it was just such a validation of all the years of hard work we'd put in to like have someone at a show in another country singing along with our songs. It was like, oh, there's people out there that do care. It's not just us doing what we want to do. So that's a positive one. A more negative one, and this will be very rememberable for everyone in the band, is this most recent tour to Europe. We were playing at Cowboy and Indiana.
I think I know where this is going.
On the Repperbahn in Hamburg, Germany. And the first night, we played there 4 nights this last tour. 2 nights, and then we had a day break. We played at this amazing bar in elsewhere in Germany, in Arnstadt. And then we came back and played 2 more nights. And the first night we were at Cowboy and Indiana, there's this guy who is extremely loud and seems very belligerent, who is incessantly screaming at the top of his lungs, banjo, banjo solo, banjo. And I mean, nonstop, just throughout the evening. And every time we played a song that had a banjo solo in it, we would be like, hey, there's a banjo solo in this song. And he would stand there and like watch for the banjo. And then as soon as the banjo solo started, he'd walk out every single time. And then he'd come back and continue screaming banjo solo.
Oh boy.
And, we play, 4 sets at these places. And so we take a little break. We talk to him for a little bit, and he's just out of his mind.
Out of his mind.
Absolutely out of his mind. And
we thought
he had the biggest hands in the world. They were just like twice the size of our hands. And this dude was like 5'8".
Yeah,
Like he was not a big dude.
Particularly tall
Enormous
for the Netherlands
hands.
or Germany, where
And
the people are tall.
Scott asked him what his name was, and he was like, he said Tyler, and Scott was like, "Oh, your name's
still
Tyler."
holding his hands up.
Yeah, still holding his hands up, and he was like, "No, Tyler, I'm a Tyler." And Scott was like, "Why did you tell me your job?" Like, it made no sense.
Tyler or Tyler?
So he terrorizes Cameron. He follows him around all night long, screaming at him about the banjo. And Cameron is just like losing his mind, like, I have to get away from this guy. The night ends. We leave the whole van ride back to where we're staying in Geschendorf. And that's what we're talking about. And then the next day we get up and we're all yelling banjo at Cameron. And he's like, don't, it's giving me PTSD.
Yeah.
And so we get back to the bar and we pull up and we walk in and he's there. And so
he told us he couldn't be there.
Yeah, second night he's there and he's screaming the entire time, banjo!
Cameron just turns a shade of white.
Banjo solo! And like the entire night, just terrorizing Cameron.
Not big enough of a room where this would fall on deaf ears.
No,
just
very noticeable.
There's 35 people there at this point.
And so, we have this day off and then we go and play a show in Arnstadt. And we stay in Erfurt. It was a beautiful town. And then we drive back. We're back in Geschendorf for a night. And then we go back to Cowboy and Indiana. He's there again. And like when we pull up, we see him and everyone's just like, oh no, it's this guy. And at this point, like the joke has worn off from most of us. Yeah. But Cameron especially is like now starting to hide. He's starting to just like hide himself in the van at breaks.
There's
he's
nowhere
hiding
to
himself.
hide.
Yeah, he's hiding himself in the van before the show and after the show, trying to avoid this guy. And then they're like, hey, we ask him, like, are you going to be at tomorrow's show? And he's like, no, I can't make it. I have a job out of town. And so we're like, oh, thank God this guy's not going to be there. And then when we show up the fourth night, we pull up and he's sitting right out front.
Of course.
and we all start laughing and Cameron is immediately just terrified. Like, no, I can't do it. I can't do another night with this guy.
This guy's going to...
And he ended up...
This guy's going to kidnap me.
When Cameron did get out...
abducted.
When Cameron eventually got out of the van, the guy tried to talk to him and Cameron just avoided him. And the guy took the hint and was like, all right, I've terrorized this person enough.
Yeah, there's always some characters in that particular street.
In bars,
In bars in general, people are there. They're cutting loose. They're trying to enjoy some entertainment, and sometimes they enjoy a little bit too hard.
Yeah, and boy, was he enjoying it. He had himself a real good time. I almost wish that we had gotten a photo with him, just because someone in the band probably has to have a photo with him, because he was just so out there and he was up in our faces every second that we weren't on stage and some of the time that we were on stage. If I'm remembering correctly, I think he did come up and yell at Cameron pretty much on stage. It was just a nightmare. And those things happen. I mean, we've experienced all sorts of crazy stuff over the years of people jumping on stage. Years ago, we played at this place, the Pickle Factory in town, that used to host these DIY shows out back. And we have this infamous fan who we love to death, Skyler Helene. Absolutely love him. But he was known back in our woodshed days for like tearing the sleeves off of his suit jackets, or
enough to be known for.
Yeah, pushing someone into a chair to sit down and then getting a bunch of other people to lift them up and hoist them like it was a wedding.
Yeah.
Like it was just insane. But we played this show at the Pickle Factory, and it's like out back in this dirt field, and there's this big mosh pit going on in the dirt. And this thing that we all knew at the woodshed was he would go and order 2 tall boys, and he'd get in the pit pit, and he'd be dancing around, and he'd be drinking one tall boy, and at some point he would just decide that he was done with one of his beers, and he would just turn and huck it at the band, like right at our heads. And so whenever Skyler was in the crowd, we all knew, like, you kept your eyes on him so that you could dodge a beer if one came flying towards you. Well, this show at Pickle Factory, I've got my eyes on him, and he's in the pit, and he's swinging around, and I'm watching him. And all of a sudden, from the far end of the pit, he turns and he looks straight at us, and he starts running towards us. And I didn't have enough time to mentally figure out what was happening, but he came barreling into the stage, and I stepped out of the way, and he crashed into the drum kit. And I look
Ouch.
down at him, and he looks up at me and turns, and I realize, oh, he was trying to tackle me.
Oh no.
And he missed.
Oh no.
But now he's closer to me, and I've got a cable plugged in. I can't go anywhere.
Help.
So then he
I only got 18 and a half feet here to run.
Yeah, he lunges at me, and I immediately fall down, and I hit Box, our old banjo player, who goes off the stage and face plants and lands on her banjo in the dirt. And I asked Skyler years later, like, why did you do that? And he was like, I just felt like tackling you. I was like, sounds about right.
He didn't remember.
Yeah, sounds about right.
He's like, which time?
Yeah, that's probably fair.
Well, that's our time.
Yeah.
This has been.
Thanks for joining us.
This has been
Tales from the road.
This episode is brought to you by our 5-song EP, a vinyl record, V as in the Roman numeral 5. Attention vinyl lovers, our new 5-song vinyl record titled V is here to elevate your collection and give your turntable the workout it deserves. Packed with tunes that will make you want to kick back, crank it up, and maybe even do a little folk Hogan jig. Visit folkhogan.com and click on the shop tab to snag your copy of our new vinyl record. Because nothing says I support local bands, local music, and specifically folk Hogan quite like spinning our new album while pretending to be a hipster DJ within the comfort of your home.
You can wear your corduroy pants. No one will know.
Once again, this has been
Tales from the road.